The inspiration for my book came from a tree, a 240-year-old tulip poplar, planted, according to legend, by the Marquis de Lafayette, on land that is today my parents' property in Burgundy. This story led me to a nearby Château de Chastellux, owned by the Chastellux family for more than 1,000 years. One of the members of this family of the 18th century was François Jean de Chastellux, uncle by marriage of Lafayette, and a major general in the French army, who served during the American War of Independence under Rochambeau. Today he is forgotten by history, but the current heirs of the Chastellux castle have given me an exclusive access to his private archive. The largest part of this unexplored archive is formed by Chastellux' correspondences, with prominent Frenchmen such as Voltaire and Diderot, Englishmen like Hume and Bentham, and Americans as Jefferson and Gouverneur Morris. The archives also contain numerous sources on the American War of Independence, like reports and maps from the Yorktown campaign and correspondences with Lafayette, Rochambeau, and of course George Washington. Based on this archival material, we can rediscover Chastellux, a soldier-philosopher who can help us to understand the age of revolutions. As a well-known nobleman, he was part of the French court. As a philosopher, he was a valued member of the Atlantic Republic of Letters. And as an officer, he was prominent in the French army and formed lasting friendships with those he served alongside, including George Washington. In these networks, the soldier-philosopher Chastellux was an intermediary for the spread of enlightened ideas, knowledge, and practices in the Atlantic space. To study this role, I am at the Washington Library, completing an English language biography on Chastellux. As a major general, third in command under Rochambeau, he was mainly responsible for the logistics and administration of the French army, but also for financial negotiations. Soon after the arrival of the French army in America, Washington and Chastellux engaged in a deep and lasting friendship, a friendship which neither time nor distance can ever eradicate, as Washington would write. Chastellux expressed his admiration for his friend in a letter that I discovered in the Chastellux archive that had never before been studied. In my travels through Italy, I recollect to have seen great many representations of Mars. The most praised of all was known under the name Mars Resting. But that sculpture could impress me half the idea Your Excellency raises in my mind. You represent at once the rest of glory and the rest of conscience, peace without and peace within. Truly, dear General, it is necessary for Europe to borrow plain specimens of virtue from allegorical and fantastical beings, while Americans truly can observe them in one of its fellow creatures. Washington and Chastellux became close because of their similarities. They were from the same generation and had the same interests and experiences, but also because Chastellux was Lafayette's uncle by marriage. Other correspondences of Chastellux' archive reveal interesting aspects of the French-American cooperation, especially on the decision of going to Yorktown in the spring and summer of 1781. Chastellux played an intermediary role here between the French and American generals. In 1783, Chastellux came back to France, and through his correspondences with prominent Americans, he served as an intermediary for political, commercial, and intellectual exchanges between France and America. In Paris, he saw Thomas Jefferson regularly, and they worked together on the publication and spread of Jefferson's notes on the states of Virginia and Chastellux' American travel diary. In 1784, his older brother died, and Chastellux received the title of Marquis. Chastellux had a mistress during almost 25 years, the Marquise de Gléon. But when Chastellux was 53 years old, he married the much younger Brigitte de Plunkett. Unfortunately, while she was pregnant, Chastellux died suddenly of a very bad fever on October 24, 1788, in Paris. So as an enlightened aristocrat, he never saw the outbreak of the French Revolution. However, just before he died, he was working on a book that would never be published. Inspired by an American example of constitutionalism and a society without aristocratic privileges, Chastellux started to think about reforms needed in France itself. He believed France had to adapt this American example to its own history and culture, and thus create a slow evolution instead of a revolution to achieve progress and happiness in the future. To sum up, the Chastellux biography reveals unknown details and connections on the Atlantic Age of revolutions, which had been hidden for over 240 years.
Click the subscribe button below and the bell icon to get notifications for new videos about George Washington and behind-the-scenes work at Mount Vernon.